Welcome in. Saturday night means it's time for DFS Chalk Talk, brought to you by Triple Play Fantasy. We get it going right after this. Oh, yes, indeed. It's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. I'm your host, Jeff Mesha, and as usual, I am joined by Mikey and Joe, where we discuss all things DFS and try to prepare a winning lineup for your Sunday NFL main slate. Tonight, we're doing a little bit different. I'm going to start on an important topic that needs to be addressed. On Thursday night, we saw Tua Tagovailoa leave the game after suffering his third concussion, and he's only 26 years old. The irony is not lost on all of us that the guy he ran into was Damar Hamlin, who was carted off the field early 2023 after collapsing from a tackle combined with a rare heart condition. So Tua, like I said, he's 26 years old, married, one son, one daughter. I mean, what happened on the field wasn't like a dirty hit. It wasn't a cheap shot. It wasn't like a highlight reel, what you would see like an out of bounds kind of hit. It was just what you would almost like a routine tackle, so to speak, by Damar Hamlin. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the beginning of Jerry Maguire, if you guys remember that movie where the little kid asks him, shouldn't somebody stop him? It's his fourth concussion, that kind of thing, and where he kind of gives him the FU. And in my opinion, this is what we do on the show. We just give our opinions. But in my opinion, Tua needs to walk away. I had an exchange last night with a friend, and I said that Tua is one step away from being hand-fed the rest of his life. All right, Tua, he's 26. If he wants to see 36, 46, and beyond, if you want to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle, he needs to stop. I mean, for him and his family, I'm so glad he got paid before this happened. He's a talented and gifted quarterback, but take the guaranteed money from that contract and just walk. I mean, I don't have children. Both of you guys do. And I guess I'll pose the question, knowing what we do now, of football, tackle football, and CTE, et cetera, would you have your sons playing tackle football at this point? I'll pose it to you guys.
Oh,
Mike's muted.
It's always me. With me, I would. Yeah, I don't think that I have a problem. And I think that what we're going to see too is we're going to see Tua come back. I think he's going to come back and play football. I think he'll just continuously go and go and go. I mean, these guys know what they're signing up for at the end of the day. They know it's a high impact sport. They know they're going to be out there getting smacked around. I agree. I would walk if it were me and I had I would have walked away when I had like $1 million. I'd be like, ha ha ha, see you guys. Like, I don't need you anymore. Like, once they guaranteed me that kind of money, I would have just walked away right then. So, I mean, I don't disagree with that part of it. I just don't think that that's what we see happen. I think we see him come back. I mean, when you can compete at that level and you're going to want to compete at that level, right? And I feel like Tua is going to be one of those guys that wants to just keep coming back and keep coming back. He wants that ring. He wants that ring just as much as everybody else out there. So I'm thinking, no, I think we do see him stay on there. And I would, I mean, it sucks. But if my boy, if he was good at football, I'd definitely want him to play. I would definitely want him to get out there, but I'd leave it up to him for sure. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I think these guys are cut from such a different cloth. Like, to your point, like if I'm Donald Trump, Joe Biden, multi-million billionaires, could be sitting on any beach of their choice in the world, being waited on for the rest of their life. And they both choose to be the president, run for president, because for whatever their motivations are. To Mikey's point, I'd be long gone with that type of money. So these guys are cut from a different cloth right off the bat. Like, he could have easily slid on that play, and he's an intelligent guy, but he went for the extra yardage, again, based on how he is. I agree with Mikey. Everything you know about the guy too. He probably is going to try to come back. I wouldn't stop my kid from playing football. I'm not sure, and it's my favorite sport. I'm not sure I'd sway him to it though either. But then I'm going to think about it. I think I'd be just as concerned for him if he was a hockey player, or a football player.
Right.
I had a cousin who just had shoulder surgery from playing rugby. So, I mean, football's not the only one like that, but I get it. And I will say this, like, I believe if I'm Tua at that age, whole life ahead of me, the money's already there, I've got a family, I don't jeopardize the rest of my life for these next couple of years. But if you play the percentages per Mike's point, he probably will.
Right. And I certainly get the point where you're coming from with hockey. The difference being they don't necessarily lead with their head. The sad part is I think that would not the guy trained. He had a couple of concussions. Then last year he stayed away from that because he learned how to slide. He learned how to stay away from the contact. But had they not been down so much as they were in that game, I think he probably would have slid. But instead he was looking for the extra yardage and led with his head, almost like an instinct. So when you have one concussion, it makes it easier to have more. I'm not saying walk away from the game completely. I'm just saying the guy's an intelligent guy, and he could probably do a lot of different things, not necessarily having to be a quarterback and having to take the contact. But that's just a point in my
these broadcasters are getting now the Tom Brady contract, the Tony Romo contract, Greg Olson. He could easily, I'm sure he could go do that. He's a well-spoken individual. So you're absolutely right about that.
Right. And he had his $212 million contract. Now, what I was looking at, if he walks away and he retires because of injury, he's looking at $167 million guaranteed from the Dolphins. Now, if he walks away, retired, and it comes out not because of injury, I don't know how they can claim that's not the case, but let's just say hypothetically that is the case. He walks away with $90 million. So either way, the guy's going to do well. And I think while he's still standing upright and while he can still talk and feed himself and everything else, I just say he walks away. In any case, and I've said that many times, we'll get into there's plenty, or at least a couple other injuries that are relevant for this week. Joe, I'll throw it to you. What do we got?
Yeah, it only took 1 week, and we've got action at all the positions now. So, I mean, obviously the two big quarterback injuries are Jordan Love and Tua. You're going to have, I already got his name, Skylar Thompson there in Miami. He looked like $1 million the other night. Jesus. You talk about not drafting and pull the curtain back. You talk about not drafting McCaffrey because of injury. Well, if you didn't draft McCaffrey Tyreek Hill was one of the first couple of picks, and now he's got a bag of dicks thrown to him for at least the next 4 weeks and probably longer, because what are the chances based on our conversation that Tua comes back in 4 weeks? So, those injuries can hit you in a lot of different ways. But then the other one real quick, quarterback, Pittsburgh, we don't know who's starting, Wilson, Fields, and really we don't know anything there. If it's Fields, is it because of injury? Is it because at this point Fields has already shown more than Russell Wilson? So we're going to have to see how that plays out. Running back, 2 major injuries this week, Christian McCaffrey, and I'd really like to throw a nice FU out to the 49ers because McCaffrey has not hit the field in the regular season. He didn't play, I don't believe, a regular snap in the preseason. This is an old injury where you went from, and I know these guys don't give a, and it's not even about fantasy football, but you went from thinking this guy was playing week 1 as of like last Thursday to now he's on the IR. So, you hear these times where teams get investigated for their injury reporting, and that one feels a little sketchy to me. Jordan Mason, obviously very good last week. I think he's going to be good for the duration as long as he's playing. Kenneth Walker in Seattle is out this week, which kind of sucks because he was very good last week. So what's his name? Charbonnet, I believe is
Max Charbonnet.
Yep. So he will be the starter there in Seattle. And then just one reminder is, we're still all on the Jerome Ford train with the Nick Chubb injury. And then wide receiver is bountiful at injury. I'm not going to go through them all, but I will go through a few. Puka Nacua out. We know that. So Cooper Kupp, even Demarcus Robinson, I think got a lot of targets last week. I like him there too going forward. T. Higgins out once again. For Cincinnati, they're in an interesting situation. 0-1, Kansas City, no T. Higgins. That'll be interesting. Jordan Addison out again for Minnesota. Hollywood Brown announced today out for the whole regular season. late January comeback, the earliest for him. So that will be an obsolete signing for the Chiefs. Jeff made this point earlier, though. Luckily, they hit with Rice last year and Worthy this year, so not as big of a deal. A.J. Brown is legit questionable for Philadelphia. I didn't know that one until a few minutes ago. So that'll be one to keep an eye out on. They're a night game, so they got a little extra time. The two new Bear wide receivers are both questionable, Keenan Allen and Adunza. So we'll wait to see how that plays out. And only other one worth mentioning is Jaden Reed in Green Bay. Looks to be questionable, but they don't really have anybody throwing them anyway.
Gotcha. Well, appreciate this, and I got to say, because of the lack of play for the starters during the preseason, some of the typical heavy hitters had less than ideal weeks from a fantasy standpoint. I'm talking about Amon-Ra, I'm talking Dalton Kincaid, Aaron Rodgers, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore. Although DJ Moore, we can kind of pretty much blame that on Caleb Williams tossing out a dud in his first game.
The quarterback stat was big, Jeff. What was it? I don't remember what the number was, but I think it was like 19 to 20 quarterbacks threw for under 200 yards week one.
It's truly something to look at, and actually that leads us well probably into our main slate lineups for this week. And I'll toss it to Mike first to get into his, because I know first we lined up on a couple of them, and Mike, I'll at least give you credit right away, because you hit a home run last week on Cooper Kupp. You literally said Puka Nacua because he wouldn't show up, and he didn't. And Kupp was
he got hurt.
I would like to point out that I called him Puka Nacua before he got hurt.
That's true.
We got the injury report,
which is so ironic because you were the president of his fan club. As people were just starting to hear about this guy last year.
Yeah, so but Cooper Kupp wasn't 100%, right? I'm telling you, Cooper Kupp is my favorite fantasy football player for a reason, because that guy has so much cut. He's got his separation game is next level, man. The things that guy can do on the football field it's insane. But yeah, so guess what we're gonna probably see again here? Oh, that's right, some more Cooper Kupp. He's right there. My lineup this week, we got Baker Mayfield coming out, man. Baker Mayfield looked good. I don't see anything slowing this team down. Baker Mayfield's playing good. He's playing hard. He's playing fast football with these guys. Godwin Evans are clicking with him. Rashad White's looking good. I got Najee Harris at Denver. Denver, man, they looked like a dumpster fire. I told you Bo Nix was going to be garbage. Just throwing that out there, too. I told you everybody's on this hype train. He looked like garbage. He looked like a rookie. There's hope there at least. Josh Jacobs, his questionable tag is gone. He's at home against Indianapolis. I think without Jordan Love there, we're going to see, because you got Malik Willis throwing the ball now. I think you're going to see a lot of running in that game. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be responsible for a lot of that. Stack it up, baby. We got Godwin right there, or as I like to call him, God Chriswin. That guy is awesome. He scored you 2 touchdowns last week. Cooper Kupp, another guy, just amazing. Get him in your lineup. Get him in all your lineups. If you can't have him in your lineups, change a guy's name in your lineup to Cooper Kupp, and you'll probably enjoy what you're doing there. Zay Flowers, I feel like, had a pretty off week last week. I think we see him bounce back this week. I think we see at least about 7-8 targets going his way. Probably turn that into about 6 catches, maybe 70 yards, possible touchdown. We got Trey McBride. Arizona looked pretty good, against Buffalo last week. I think that they're going to see that team start kind of taking a couple upticks, and I think this guy's going to be a big part of that. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to start seeing a few targets, but I still think when we're in the red zone, we're going to be looking this guy's way. And then Jonathan Taylor, I took him out last week. I had to take him out for Tyreek Hill, which, boy, am I glad I did, because I knew Tyreek Hill was going to be way mad. At home or at Green Bay, I think they're just, like I said, I think it's going to be a game that you see get pretty well out of hand pretty quick for Indianapolis with no Jordan Love there. And so I feel like it's going to be a lot on the ground. And then Chiefs at home against Kansas City. I know last week I said you're going to see me going up against the Patriots a whole lot. You're going to see a common theme there. Well, Patriots went out and won that damn week against the Bengals. And the Bengals look like garbage. The Bengals are terrible. They did not have any plans working for them. I think until they start getting things lined up. And now they'll probably go to Kansas City, because that is the one team that can beat Patrick Mahomes at home is Cincinnati. So probably I might change that. We'll see. But that's where I'm at right now. What do you guys got?
So before I get to you, Joe, I'll say a couple things. One, I'll certainly agree with you.
Real quick, if you don't mind, just so I can. Keep your lineup
So-
up there if you don't mind, buddy.
Oh, gotcha.
Thank you.
So I'll agree with you right off the bat with Baker Mayfield. Very underrated. Like I said, last week we talked about it a little bit because he had his first 4,000-yard season ever last season, highest completion percentage, most touchdowns, and now that he's getting in rhythm with these guys for another season. They're up against Detroit with the highest over/under of the week. I think that should be a home run. I guess we'll see how it plays out, but I think that's a home run. The one I might disagree about a little bit with is Zay Flowers. It's such a run-heavy offense. I was so high on Zay Flowers last year. The guy let me down week after week after week. He just simply never really saw the end zone. He had some targets. He's good for maybe 9 targets, 6 receptions, 60 yards. That's seemingly the case for Zay Flowers. He just seemed to let me down. I don't know what your thoughts are, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have better games than he had. I like to think about how he was doing, kind of trending towards the end of last season and in the playoffs. I think he's going to have some big games. My only worry with Flowers this week is if they score 3 rushing touchdowns in the first half of this game, he's not going to get a lot of opportunity home against Las Vegas based on that matchup. But I mean, the guy passes the eye test. Like, he looks like the type of guy that should be taking wide receiver screens to the house. Other than that, I'm on the same page from a Mayfield perspective. You got to like Jacobs now when it's a good matchup, given the fact that they have no QB. I'm on the Cup train at this point. I can't argue Godwin, although like you guys were both on Godwin last week and you were both right. So I certainly can't say that you were wrong, but it was funny to me because he stunk last year. And even when they started winning last year, and he still wasn't very good. So it's interesting that he fired back last week, but he should be good because before last year, they were both good every year. So it's interesting with him. McBride, you got to imagine, gets back on track this week. I really do like Jonathan Taylor. I've been going back and forth about him. Najee Harris, given the injuries, you could have Jordan Mason and save some money there. You could have Dobbins there and save a lot of money, I believe. At least you can on DraftKings. So I'd probably make a tweak to Najee Harris. My issue with Harris at this point is it doesn't feel like he's ever going 20 carries for 190 yards and 3 touchdowns on a given week. Like, it feels like he's 20 carries for 80 to 100 yards. You're going to get your touchdown. You go home happy with your 15, but I don't love that ceiling.
You know who he's going to do that against, though, right? Denver.
Who's that? Quite possibly.
They're giving it up, man. They're giving it up this year. Denver's not going to be a good team. And I also really quick wanted to throw a joke in there while you were saying it, but I couldn't get in. Hollywood Brown being out, I wonder if Xavier Worthy will just drop a couple of passes so that way the fans can miss him. It'll be like, oh, there he is. Like, but it won't be him.
that ain't right, Joe. That ain't right, Mikey. You know what I mean? Seriously, that ain't right, man. But Joe, I'll throw it to you for your main slate lineup. Who you got coming up this week?
Yeah, and I'm making a quick change now too because of some of these injuries. But feeling pretty good about this. All right, let's get. Hold on a minute. I gotta share this.
In your Tommy Cutlets T-shirt, by the way, with your backward Giants hat. So you're looking sharp this week, kid.
Which is amazing because let me not be. I mean, I'm a real Giants fan. There's no doubt about that. But that being said, I watched 7 hours of Red Zone last week and 0.0 seconds of the New York Football Giants, and I certainly do not regret that decision because that was a shit show for them. But I am on the Baker Mayfield train this week. Absolutely. When you had 19 quarterbacks who didn't even hit 200 yards, Mayfield has just become the pillar of consistency as it pertains to fantasy quarterbacks. I don't see that changing at Detroit. It's a tough matchup. We don't need him to win. We just need him to throw for yards and touchdowns, and I think he will do that. I got Kyron Williams bouncing back for the Rams. I might actually change that and make that Jordan Mason. I actually am going to change that, so we'll get a little real-time shift here. We're going to make that Jordan Mason now that he is official and McCaffrey's out. Mason ran all over a very good Jet defense last week, so curious to see what he does against Minnesota when he's getting all the carries. You got to love Dobbins has got to be probably one of the surprises of the week last week for the Chargers. He just on only 10 attempts too, 135 yards. He got in the end zone. I don't see that changing for them. They're playing Carolina. Can't have a better matchup than that. I've learned. I will. The great Mikey Oz has spoken. I feel like I couldn't be on this show and not start Cooper Kupp this week. Again, Rams need a win. Close, tough loss last week against Detroit. So having that matchup against Arizona, I think is going to be very good for their offense. Right now, I was rolling with Jamison Williams, but because I'm saving the money on Kyron Williams and using Mason, I can now roll with Michael Evans. So I will do the stack a little differently from Mikey, who went with Godwin and Mayfield. I'm going to go Mike Evans and Mayfield. Can't argue with Evans. He was great last week. He's going to throw his 3 or 4 clunkers in this year that are inexplicable, but the other 13 will be good. Shaheed. I went back and forth with Shaheed last week. I played him a little bit. I didn't play him in other cases. And what did he do? He caught that home run ball in the first quarter, 59-yard touchdown pass. And that's what you're looking for him, 4,600. I still think that's a steal at Dallas. They're going to have to score some points. I'm going to take advantage of another. We didn't get to tight end injuries. My good friend, David Njoku is out this week for the Cleveland Browns. Jordan Atkins will start. Atkins got 4 targets and 3 catches last week. He will get most of those tight end snaps. So, cheap play, 3,000 on DraftKings, but I feel like he could get you 5 to 10. I'm flexing Breece Hall. The Jets weren't, I don't really know what the Jets were last week, but again, it was at San Francisco. It's Tennessee this week. Hall was good from a fantasy perspective against San Francisco. 6 targets, 5 catches, 16 attempts. So that's 21 touches. Almost 100 yards. He got in the end zone. So I like Breece Hall to have a big one this week. And then I will be changing the Raven defense only because of the other shifts that I made. And I think when you look at changing the Raven defense, I think I'm going to go to Seattle and still have a few bucks left. But I think I'm going to, you know what? I don't know. What would you guys do here with what's left for defense?
I think
it's
I would
hard.
Go,
go ahead, Mike.
I think I would go with Pittsburgh right here. I think at Denver, you're pretty safe bet.
I can't afford them though. 34 is they're red. You probably can't see it.
I would stick with Seattle at New England. I get it. They beat Cincinnati last year, but with Jacoby Brissett, New England is certainly due for an absolute clunker, and Seattle's defense is not half bad. So I would roll with that.
What do you think, Mikey?
I like it. Yeah, I think if I could get, I want one of those other 2 defenses if I'm stretching right there. Yeah. But if I can't, I think I like the Seahawks matchup. I think that's a good one.
All right.
So I'll just say this, and I'll just, if Mike has some extra comments, I'll toss to you in a second. But I like everything about it. I have Dobbins in my lineup, just even though it's hilarious because he had 1 fewer carry than Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards had like 11 carries for like 36 yards. Dobbins had 10 for 135. So you go from averaging 1 point something per carry to 13 and a half yards a carry. Hilarious. The one thing I have a problem would be is the tight end with Cleveland. You know when Cleveland tight ends were good? When Joe Flacco was there. When Joe Flacco was there. Not when Deshaun Watson was there. They were awful. And Njoku and Yoko, whatever you want to call them, had 0 going on until Joe Flacco came in. So that's what I'll take issue with. I don't know about you, Mike.
That's fair.
I don't like, I agree with that. Everything on Cleveland, I think they're worried. If I were Cleveland, I feel like I would probably be worried right now. I would be thinking about, what did I do? How did I spend all this money watching Baker Mayfield? It's funny. There's a tweet from like 2 years ago that says, man, I can't believe they paid this much for this guy who missed a year in the NFL. Now, everything aside, right? Like I can separate my politics from my football, right? Like, or I'd never draft Tyreek Hill, things like that, because there's a lot of questionable things that guy has done in his life, but I don't care about that. I'm here to win fantasy games, right? And so Deshaun Watson fits in that same category. Yep, I don't agree with what he did. Again, I wouldn't play any Patriots because of what Robert Kraft did, but I have to. These guys are going to win you football games. They're going to win you seasons and things like that. But, man, they look terrible. So, yeah, I feel like I might do is shift at tight end. I feel like But I do like the fact that that guy is a high potential to get you 5 to 10 points, which in this tight end landscape right now, that's top 5.
Well, Mikey, I was subscribing to your thought. A shitty quarterback, what the two things, and you said it a bunch of times last week, whether it's a rookie quarterback or a shitty quarterback, he leans on two things, right? The running back and the tight end. And for 3,000, obviously he's not a great play, but he's 3,000.
Yeah, and he's gonna start. I like the upside of it. But I hate the team. Like that's about the only thing I have.
No, they're in deep shit. They're going to be the first team. If you think about it, it'd be interesting the way it plays out with them because Deshaun Watson's going to be the first one of these hugely guaranteed deals that is a complete dumpster fire immediately.
Right. Tua might beat him, and I'm not to say that Tua's a dumpster fire or anything like that, but that contract front office, that's going to look terrible, right? Like, I'm not saying anything against him if he does make that decision for his life and his family, which would be awesome. You know, like, okay, yeah, go take care of your mental health and keep your brain intact, buddy. Like Jeff said, I mean, you might be one hit away from eating out of a spoon the rest of your life. So, I mean, if that was the case, but that, like, so now post tense, looking at it past the fact, that's going to look like a bust of a contract.
Yeah. It's fair.
Well, and people can fact check me about this. Even if that is the case, Deshaun Watson's is still worse.
Yeah.
Because let's just say hypothetically they cut him. They take a dead cap hit, and again in the comments, please fact check me if I'm wrong. They take a dead cap hit, 170 million roughly next year, and the total cap is 270. So Cleveland has nowhere to go. So. Yeah. Anyways,
and Houston's doing a tap dance.
Yep.
Truly. So
with DJ Stroud as their quarterback. I love it.
What a turnaround by that team. I'll quickly get into my lineup. I had a lot. I don't know if Joe, if you can throw it up there for me.
Which one is it?
It's the Jaden Daniels, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins. I know I got a handful of there. Daniels, Jacobs, Dobbins, Cup. There's a lot of overlap. I had a ton of overlap with you guys, so I'll just briefly run through it. But Jaden Daniels, number one, Mikey and I even said this last week. This is the cheapest you're ever going to see him, and it was $7,000 last week. This week already he's $7,900. Did they do well last week? No. Did he have 2 rushing touchdowns? Yes. So the guy's going to be a home run, I think. So Josh Jacobs, again, Mikey hammered on it earlier. And I miss Jordan Love. Jesus Christ. Jordan Love is out. Backup is in. He had 18 touches last week. I expect a ton of touches this week. J.K. Dobbins, I'm throwing it in there because he's 6,800 on FanDuel, even though Gus Edwards had more touches than he did, which I find amusing. But Dobbins did a hell of a lot more with that. Harbaugh still runs the ball a ton, and I expect that to continue at Carolina. Cooper Kupp, not for nothing, 21 targets, 14 receptions, 110 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's all I got to say about Cooper Kupp. Mike Evans, we already touched on him earlier. 8 for 8, 8 targets, 8 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 80-something yards. I see him, Mayfield throwing to him a bunch in Detroit. Third, I got Michael Pittman. I mean, he's not a great week 1 versus Houston. Still, he had 8 targets, still the number 1 wide receiver. All right.
I was surprised about Pittman last week because they scored points too. I was really shocked that he didn't have, like, I wouldn't even think they'd be able to score that many points without him having a good game.
And to me, at 6,400 at Green Bay, I expect a bounce back week or hope for a bounce back week from Pittman, at least from a fantasy standpoint. Tight end, I got Brock Bowers, the rookie, last week, first week. He's at Baltimore. I know it's a tough matchup, but we just said it as far as who these guys lean on. You got Gardner Minshew, and then they'll lean on hopefully the tight end. He last week 8 targets, 6 receptions, 58 yards. So I think he'll be a decent target at Baltimore. Flex, Ramondre Stevenson, a bit of a surprise of what happened with the Patriots beating the Bengals last week. Obviously, you leaned on Ramondre a ton. He had 28 touches overall. I don't expect him to slow that down. Now, will he get slowed down a little bit versus Seattle? Probably, but he still gets a ton of touches. My guess is hopefully he at least gets in the end zone once, so we'll see what happens there. And then defense, I made it a little cheap, but it's still Washington versus the New York Football Giants. Joey's New York Football Giants. So we saw what Daniel Jones was doing last week. He has, since his contract, and this is sad to hear, and I'm sure Joe has heard this stat since then. Since he signed that contract, he has thrown 3 pick sixes and 2 touchdowns to his own teammates, passing touchdowns. So he has thrown more pick sixes than he has passing touchdowns.
Some people really think that this week is it for him because he actually, career-wise, is phenomenal against the Commanders. If you actually took his stats out of his career stats against Washington, you're literally looking at one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. So people are kind of like, if he ain't doing it this week, he ain't doing it.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens. I took Washington because they're playing them, and
Washington. I don't blame him for taking Washington.
And they're 3,800 on FanDuel, so I could save some money there and put it towards something else. So, and I'll let you guys take away what you will on that one, and then we'll kind of wrap it up from there.
I don't have much to complain about on this one, to be completely honest. I think Jaden Daniels is going to bail you out with his feet, like we talked about. I like the running backs. I like all 3 wideouts. I think Pittman will come back. You know, Brower's against Baltimore. It'll be interesting to see how he does. I have no problem with Stevenson right now. And you're playing the defensive matchup with the Commanders. I don't really have much to balk about with this one.
I think this lineup is filth. I think it's terrible. No, I'm just kidding. I like it. No, and especially the Jaden Daniels double dip. I like that you're playing that guy again, coming back for another week. I had to take Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield was oddly just a hair cheaper on FanDuel there. And so I couldn't quite get up to play him again. But boy, if you watched any of that game last week, he was a nerve wracker there until about the 3rd and a half quarter. Then all of a sudden he exploded right there at the end and just got you. I was like, oh yeah, there we go. There's my Jaden Daniels. And so, yeah, no, I like it, man. And we got a lot of the same overlaps there as well. I like a lot of the plays there. I like Jaden Daniels a lot this week.
Right on. So we will pretty much wrap it up here. Don't forget, although Joe will not be joining us tomorrow morning, we do the Blitz starting at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we answer all your questions, who you're starting, who you shouldn't start, that kind of thing, live, either on YouTube. Find us on Twitter. We got our handles at the bottom of the screen there, so you can check us out there. So it'll be Mikey and I tomorrow morning. Joe, you will be enjoying Pearl Jam at Fenway. Is that right?
That is right, my friend.
Excellent. Well, hey, you enjoy. Catch me and Mike tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. Until next Saturday, we got you covered.